A super common question I get as a permaculture designer is how to design land in arid, desert climate, and a lot of times such land is more affordable because of the hostile conditions. And I've seen a lot of content that will show you a food forest in a desert, but in reality, people don't know what it really takes to succeed in this endeavor. So I will tell you what unique set of qualities you need to have or acquire to take on such challenge, and I am certain you will absolutely love the tips I will be sharing for succeeding in a desert. And this is only the introduction to the proper desert design workshop video. So guys, stay tuned. Firstly, you should know that food is not a limiting factor in the desert. So what is? You guessed right. Water is. And once you get water, the potential for growth is great. But what it takes to achieve this? First, do your research. You need to understand how much it rains and how frequently. You can get this information from weather data station, and you need to be familiar with the soil type on the site you want to invest in and get to know the strategies to improve it. Web Soil Survey in the US is the great starting point to learn about the soils in your area you're searching, and you might want to eliminate some areas where there is impenetrable caliche or bedrock, which doesn't make it impossible to grow trees, as permaculture has solutions to that problem, but it would be so much more difficult for you to get started. If you plan to go off-grid, for more information like on solar performance estimate, you can check online resources too, and the useful links will be down in the description. If you can get a slope, that will be a bonus, as it will help you divert the water to your water harvesting features with the gravity force. But pay attention to slope orientation in the desert. You don't want equator facing slope, as it would be hotter than on the side facing the opposite direction. Next, see if there is any vegetation already growing on the land, and try to find what these plants indicate. Some plants have very deep roots and can access water deep underground, like mesquites. You can use their seeds and cuttings to quickly establish new growth of pioneers, as well as windbreak barriers. Other plants may indicate saline soils like saltbush, which you should avoid. If you have a debate about similar properties with similar rainwater catchment area, it is the region from which all precipitation collects and flows to your area, see if the other has additional bonus resources like rocks that you can use for dam construction and other things, which we'll be discussing in a bit. You need to be also resourceful. Making the most out of limited resources is a necessity in the desert. You must be very conservative about water, so you don't stretch your system beyond the capacity of your water supply. Boring a well in a desert or using existing one often comes to mind. However, if you bore in the desert, you will find that the best water is close to the pediment. The further out in the plain you bore, salinity increases, and sometimes you may even pollute fresh water located close to the pediment by boring too deeply, and you will end up with unusable drinking and irrigation water, which is a complete disaster. The permaculture way of dealing with water scarcity is to have a rainwater harvesting catchment area. Ideally, you'd have 20 times bigger area for runoff than a cultivated land. So you must plan the whole layout of your farm ahead of planting. Any water systems that fit your landscape take priority. And to be honest, this should be always the case, regardless of the climate you're in. Water first, then access, then structures, and then plantings. You should also consider filtering grey water, and this is the water used in kitchen and bathroom sinks and shower, and that means you should be using biodegradable soaps and washing liquids, and this water, after being filtered through reed beds, could flow to your garden and food forest. Another way to conserve moisture is by mulching. I will talk about traditional plant mulch in the next point, but here I would like to focus on stones. Sometimes dew is critical for plant survival in the desert, and stone create a perfect dew trap at night. So there's often a positive humidity in the desert at night, so the moisture condenses within these rocks and drips into the sand. If you are lucky enough to find good clays in the desert, you should make water tanks in the ground, but the tanks should be deep and narrow, and they should be connected to a runoff area, and they should be roofed to prevent evaporation. And apart from doing diligent research, being resourceful, you will need to have a long-term vision, commitment, and determination to overcome challenges, setbacks, and obstacles. Water harvesting will be your main goal, but you can't increase water where you won't make drastic changes to the landscape. So you need to take advantage of all the natural features of the desert. What do I mean? Depending on where you can buy land or where you want to settle, you need to be mindful of the landscape. For example, you have a wadi floor, which refers to the bottom or bed of a wadi, which is dry riverbed or valley that typically carries water during periods of heavy rain or flash floods. During dry periods, wadi floor may be completely dry, consisting of compacted sand, gravel, or rocky terrain. So you should be positioned higher of the wadi floor, but down of the escarpment, which is a steep slope or a long cliff, and your garden needs to be protected and ideally walled against any potential flood. And you don't have to wall the trees as they will withstand a few days of flooding. So this alone shows you need to go extra mile in choosing a strategic position in the landscape. You will also need to conserve moisture by heavily mulching your plants. Another reason to mulch is to provide a steady access of water through moist mulch to prevent a rapid rise of pH in soil in big rain events. And another potential obstacle is that you will need a relatively large area to furnish a sufficient quantity of mulch, a minimum 10 times bigger area than cultivated land. So you can plant mulch-producing plants serving more than one function. For example, you can have barrier plants for wild animals and also windbreaks on banks. And some trees are also producing large quantities of mulch, like tamarisk, casuarina, and pines. And the mesquites are also great as they develop deep roots and produce heavy pods, which can be fed to livestock. So as you can see, there are solutions and they are indigenous common sense methods of thriving in harsh conditions, but you need to persevere and keep going, even if it's hard. If you'd like to learn more about permaculture strategies, you should consider joining our membership program, which will be launching in June. If you want to participate in a survey sharing your vision about your ideal permaculture online community, click the link below. Next, we'll briefly talk about adaptability. You must be willing to adapt your lifestyle routines and expectations to suit the conditions of the desert. For example, the second largest problem after water scarcity on the desert is a termite problem, because they may eat your desired living species like a carob tree. You should also know that they are like worms in humid climate, so they are a major decomposer and you will need to rely on them for a compost decomposition, but you need to keep them out of the garden and food forest. How? You could incorporate natural predators like chickens as they scratch around and eagerly see termites. For any construction or trellising, you will need to use termite-proof wood like black locust or honey locust. Next, I'd like to talk about an ability to change your mindset. Traditional gardening knowledge may help you, but it may also harm you. As in the desert, you need to start thinking differently. For example, in the desert, you really want to introduce rampant, fast-breeding species. Why? You need to build the soil and soil cover, so any plant that takes over a traditional garden and that can adapt to desert would be most wanted here. Some plants will spread like crazy and you should think twice before eliminating them. There may be also solutions to your problems that you haven't thought about before. For example, if your future property has a sandy soil, it won't hold the moisture for a long time because sand particles are relatively large compared to silt and clay. So what can you do? You can create a special moisture barrier by digging up trenches and inserting vertical plastic sheets inside. If you have access to clay, the barrier could be also made out of that. So whenever you irrigate, by the way, sprinkler won't work in the hot climate, you need to use drip irrigation system. And the water will stay within the barrier for longer. So you should put it right around the garden and have lots of mulch within it. If you're excited about learning about these solutions, you have to watch the upcoming video where I will be drawing permaculture approved landscape design features of a desert. Stay tuned, subscribe and type all your questions down below. Thanks for watching.